Before I start this story, I need you to stop what you're doing for just a second. Where are you watching this from right now? Are you curled up in bed, lying on your couch, maybe sitting in your car with the windows up? Just you and your thoughts? Because honey, wherever you are, this story, it was made for you. I want you to ask yourself something. Have you ever loved somebody so deeply, so completely, that you made yourself smaller just to fit into the space they gave you? Have you ever cheered for someone, prayed for someone, pushed someone toward their greatness, only to watch them walk right past you and into somebody else's arms? If you've ever cried alone in the dark after blocking somebody's number, if you've ever sat on the floor of your bathroom wondering how you ended up here, if you've ever looked in the mirror and whispered, "I deserve better than this," but then picked up the phone and called him anyway, then baby, pull up a chair. Get comfortable, because this story is about a real woman, a strong woman, a woman who loved hard, gave everything, and almost lost herself completely. But here's the thing about women like her, and maybe women like you. They don't stay broken. They rebuild. And when they do, oh, the world better watch out. This is her story, and it starts in a small office cubicle, in the middle of a city that had no idea what was coming. Her name was Imani, 27 years old. Brown skin, natural hair she was still learning to love, and a laugh that could light up a whole room, even when she was dying on the inside. She grew up on the south side of Chicago. Not the pretty part they show in magazines. The real south side. The kind where you learn early that life is not going to hand you anything. You gotta scratch and claw and fight for every single thing you want. And Imani? She fought. Lord, did she fight. She was the first in her family to finish a 4-year degree. Her mama cried at that graduation ceremony like she was crying at church on a Sunday morning, loud, ugly, beautiful tears streaming down her face while she held Imani's face in both hands and said, "Baby, you are the one we've been waiting for." But degrees don't pay rent. And in a city like Chicago, rent doesn't wait. So Imani took the first job she could find. Entry level. Low title. Low pay. Low everything. She was a data entry clerk at a mid-sized marketing firm downtown. She sat in a cubicle so small she could touch both walls if she stretched her arms out. She answered phones. She filed papers. She made coffee for people who never said thank you. And she told herself every single morning on that bus ride in, this is not forever. This is just the beginning. That's how she survived. That's how women like Imani always survive. They make deals with themselves in the quiet moments. They whisper promises to God in the dark. They keep going when everything is telling them to stop. But even the strongest women need somebody to believe in them. And that somebody, for Imani, was a man named Deshaun. Deshaun Carter was 30 years old, corporate job, dressed nice, talked smooth. He worked in the same building as Imani, 3 floors up in the financial department. He had that kind of presence that makes a room shift when he walks in. Not loud, not showy, just solid. Like a man who knew exactly who he was. He first noticed Imani at the coffee machine in the break room. She was standing there, stirring her cup, reading something on her phone, completely in her own world. And something about that, the fact that she wasn't performing, wasn't trying to be seen, that caught his attention. He introduced himself. She was polite but guarded. She'd learned to be. But Deshaun was patient. He wasn't the kind of man who rushed things. He asked questions and actually listened to the answers. He remembered details, like the fact that she was studying for a certification exam, or that her mama's birthday was coming up, or that she had a big presentation that week and was nervous about it. "You got this," he'd say. Simple. Steady. Like he meant it. And somehow the way he said it, she believed him. That's a dangerous thing, you know. When somebody makes you feel seen for the first time in a long time. When somebody looks at you, not the version of you that's performing or protecting yourself, but the real you, the tired you, the trying her best you. And they say, "I see you, and I think you're everything." That's how Imani fell. Not all at once. Not dramatically. She fell slowly, the way you fall asleep. You don't even notice it's happening until you're already gone. They started eating lunch together, then texting after work, then talking on the phone late at night, long after both of them should have been sleeping. She'd lie in her bed in her 1-bedroom apartment on the south side, phone pressed to her ear, and they'd talk about everything. Family, dreams, fear, regret, the things that keep you up at 2 a.m. when the rest of the world is quiet. Deshaun grew up in Atlanta, moved to Chicago for work. He was the only son in his family, the golden child, the one everybody had big expectations for. He carried that weight the way only sons do, quietly, heavily, never letting it show. Imani understood that kind of pressure, so she never added to it. She was always his soft place to land. His peace. His person. And that's exactly what she thought she was, his person. For almost 2 years, she believed that with everything in her. She had no idea what was building in the shadows. 14 months into knowing Deshawn, something shifted for Imani at work. She had been quietly preparing, taking online courses after hours, getting her certifications, building skills that her current job would never see or appreciate. She was the girl who'd clock out at 5, go home, eat a quick meal, and then sit at her kitchen table with her laptop open until midnight, studying, building, growing. Deshawn noticed. He was the only one who did. "You're not going to be at that desk much longer," he told her one evening when she showed him what she was working on. "I'm serious, Imani. This right here. This is real. Don't stop." She didn't stop. And 6 months later, she got the call. A larger firm, one of the top digital marketing agencies in Chicago, reached out about a position. A real position. A position with a title that meant something, a salary that meant something, benefits, a team to lead. It was everything she had been working toward in those midnight hours at her kitchen table. She almost didn't apply. Imposter syndrome is real, honey. It'll sit on your chest like a boulder and tell you that you don't deserve what you've earned. It'll dress itself up in logic and say things like, "You're not ready," and "What if you fail?" and "Who do you think you are?" But Deshawn's voice was louder than the fear. "Apply. You're ready. You've always been ready." She applied. She got the job. The day she found out, she called him first. Not her mama. Not her best friend. Him. And when he picked up, she couldn't even get the words out properly. She was laughing and crying at the same time, that messy, beautiful mix of joy and relief and disbelief. And he laughed with her. Proud. Genuinely, deeply proud. "I knew it," he said. "I told you. I always knew it." She moved to the new office the following month. New building, new floor, new title. People called her by her last name now. She had a team. She had a budget. She had a seat at a table that actually mattered. And she was making more money than Deshawn. That part surprised her a little. She wasn't sure how he'd handle it. A lot of men don't handle that well, the shift in financial footing. The fragile ego thing is real. But Deshawn? He just smiled. "That's my girl," he said. And he meant it. At least, she thought he meant it. But here's the thing about foundations built on secrets. They always crack. And the crack, when it came for Imani and Deshawn, it didn't come quietly. It came like a wrecking ball. It was a Tuesday. Imani remembered because Tuesdays were their day. The day they'd meet for dinner after work. Nothing fancy. Usually a little Caribbean spot in Bronzeville that they both loved. Jerk chicken, rice and peas, ginger beer. Their spot. But Deshawn was late. And when he finally arrived, he didn't look like himself. He sat down across from her, and he had this look on his face. The look of a man who has been carrying something heavy and has finally run out of places to put it. "I need to tell you something," he said. She put her fork down. "Okay." And what came out of his mouth next? Those words rearranged her entire world. He had gotten married. Not recently. Not last week. Months ago. His family, back in Atlanta, had arranged it. His mother, his aunts, the whole network of expectation and tradition, and this is how we do things. They had found a girl. A girl from a good family. A girl who was beautiful and came from money, and who they believed was the right fit for their only son. And Deshawn, their golden child, their only son, the man who carried everyone's expectations on his back, had said yes. He told himself it was temporary. He told himself it didn't mean anything. He told himself that Imani would never have to know. But he was sitting across from her now in their spot, at their table, and he was telling her. Because he couldn't keep it anymore. Because the guilt had become bigger than the secret. "I don't love her," he said. "I don't sleep with her. It's not a real marriage, Imani. It's a performance. It's for my family." She stared at him. The jerk chicken sat untouched between them. The ginger beer went warm. And Imani felt something inside her. Something that had been building so quietly she hadn't even noticed it. Just go still. Like a held breath. Like the second before thunder. "You got married," she said. Quietly. Carefully. Like she was confirming the laws of gravity. "You are a married man. It's not what you think. You are a married man," she said again. "And you let me sit here, across from you, thinking we were." She couldn't finish the sentence. She picked up her bag. She walked out. She drove home in silence. She sat in her car in the parking lot of her apartment building for 45 minutes, just staring at the steering wheel. And then she went upstairs, sat on her bathroom floor, and cried. Not the pretty kind of crying. The ugly, gasping, can't catch your breath kind. The kind that starts in your chest and takes over your whole body. The kind that's been waiting to happen for a long time. She cried for the relationship. She cried for the future she'd imagined. She cried for every late-night phone call and every "I believe in you," and every moment she thought she had found something real. But mostly, and she wouldn't admit this until much later, she cried because she had helped build the man who just broke her heart. She had poured her belief into him like water into dry ground. She had loved him when he couldn't love himself out loud. And he had taken all of that. And then he had gone home to somebody else. She broke up with him that night. Sent the message. Clear, clean, final. We're done. Don't contact me. And she meant it. She meant it for 3 whole days. 3 days. That's how long the silence lasted. 3 days of blocked numbers, unanswered doors, and Imani walking around her apartment like a woman who had lost something she couldn't name. She cleaned things that didn't need cleaning. She rearranged her bookshelf twice. She made elaborate meals she barely touched. She was doing what strong women do when they're falling apart. She was staying busy so she wouldn't have to feel it. But grief is patient. It doesn't rush. It doesn't care about your schedule or your coping mechanisms or the brave face you put on for the world. It just waits, quietly, in the corner of every quiet room, in the pause between songs, in the moment right before you fall asleep, when your mind goes still and the truth comes rushing in like cold water. And the truth was this: Imani missed him. Not the married version. Not the man who had sat across from her at their table with his confession and his excuses. She missed the man who had stood next to her at that coffee machine with no agenda. The man who remembered every small thing she told him. The man who said, "You got this," when she didn't believe it about herself. She missed the version of Deshawn she had built him up to be. And maybe, she thought in her darkest, most honest moments, maybe that version had never fully existed. Maybe she had loved the potential of him more than the reality. Maybe she had given so much that she had filled in all his gaps herself, made him whole with her own love, and then mistaken her own creation for the real thing. That's the cruelest kind of heartbreak. Not losing someone who was perfect. Losing someone who could have been. On the 4th day, he called from a different number. She picked up before she realized what she was doing. Imani. Just her name. Just one word. And something in her chest cracked open like a window after a long winter. "Don't," she whispered. "I'm not giving up on you," he said. "I'm not doing that. You can block every number I have. I'll find a way. Not to pressure you. I just need you to know that I'm not walking away from you." "I can't. You already walked away," she said. "You just did it quietly, so I wouldn't notice until it was too late." He didn't have an answer for that. She hung up, but she didn't block the new number. And they both knew what that meant. Here's what nobody tells you about loving someone who belongs to somebody else. It doesn't destroy you all at once. That would almost be easier. Instead, it takes you apart piece by piece. Like a slow leak. Like a sweater with one loose thread that you keep meaning to fix. And one day you look down, and the whole thing has unraveled in your hands. Imani started falling apart in small ways. At work, she was still sharp, still brilliant, still the woman her team looked to when things got hard. She showed up every day in her blazer, her natural hair twisted and pinned perfectly, her presentation prepared, her voice steady. Nobody at the office would have looked at her and seen what was happening underneath. But at home, alone, she was a different woman. She'd block Deshawn on Monday, unblock him by Wednesday, call him by Thursday, cry by Friday, block him again on Saturday, and then sit alone on Sunday, the quietest day, the day that always hurt the most, wondering how she had ended up here. She called herself names she would never let anyone else call her. Stupid, weak, pathetic. She'd look in the mirror some mornings and not recognize the woman looking back at her. Puffy eyes, exhausted face, a sadness sitting right behind her expression like a shadow that wouldn't leave. She told her best friend Kezia some of it. Not all of it, because some shame lives too deep for even your best friend to reach. And Kezia told her what best friends always say. "Girl, leave that man alone. He is married. He is not your problem to fix." Imani would nod. Agree. Say the right things. And then she'd go home and pick up the phone. Because here's what Kezia didn't understand, and what Imani herself was only beginning to understand. This wasn't just about love anymore. This was about identity. about the fact that 80% of who Imani had become professionally, emotionally, mentally, was built in the shadow of this man's belief in her. She had grown herself up in the warmth of his encouragement. And now she didn't know who she was without it. She didn't know if the woman in the blazer, the woman with the team and the title and the corner office, she didn't know if that woman could exist without him somewhere in the background cheering. That's what scared her more than anything. Not losing Deshawn, losing herself. One evening, she was sitting on her couch, phone in her hand, going back and forth in her head about whether to call him, when a message came through. Not from Deshawn, from an unknown number. "Hi, I think we need to talk. This is Nadia, Deshawn's wife." Imani stared at the screen for a full 2 minutes. Her heart was going so fast she could feel it in her throat. She typed back, "How did you get my number?" The response came quickly. "He's not as careful as he thinks he is." Imani sat with that for a moment. Then she typed, "What do you want to talk about?" And Nadia said, "I want to talk about my husband. And I think you know more about him than I do." They met at a coffee shop in Lincoln Park. Neutral territory. Imani's idea. She got there early. She always got everywhere early. It was a control thing. She needed to be the one who was already seated, already composed, when the other person walked in. She ordered a black coffee she didn't drink. She sat with her back to the wall, facing the door, and she waited. When Nadia walked in, Imani's first thought, and she hated herself for it, was that she was stunning. Deshawn had told her his wife was beautiful. He had said it casually, almost dismissively, the way men do when they want you to know that beauty means nothing to them. But knowing something and seeing it are two different things. And Nadia was the kind of beautiful that makes a room pause. Tall, dark-skinned, elegant, the kind of woman who wore a simple coat and somehow looked like she was dressed for a magazine. She was also, Imani noticed immediately, nervous. Beneath all that elegance, her hands were not quite steady. She held her purse strap a little too tightly. Her smile, when she spotted Imani, had a fragility to it. She sat down. They looked at each other. Two women who had both been loving the same man. "Thank you for meeting me," Nadia said. "I almost didn't," Imani answered. "Honest." Nadia nodded like she appreciated the honesty. "I know about you," she said. "Not everything, but enough. Deshawn, he talks in his sleep sometimes. And his phone, like I said, he's not as careful as he thinks." "I'm sorry," Imani said. And she meant it. Whatever mess she was in, she had not sought out this woman's pain. She had not known about Nadia until it was already too late. "Don't apologize," Nadia said quietly. "You didn't make vows to me." He did. That sentence sat between them for a moment, heavy and true. "What do you want from me?" Imani asked. Nadia looked down at the table. Then back up. "The truth. I just want someone to be honest with me for once." Does he love you?" Imani looked at this woman, this beautiful, nervous, dignified woman, and she felt something break open in her chest that had nothing to do with rivalry or jealousy. She felt grief. For both of them. "I think he cares about me," Imani said carefully. "I think what we had was real. But I also think he's not being fair to you. And honestly, he's not being fair to me either." Nadia's jaw tightened slightly. "He told me this marriage was arranged. That his heart wasn't in it. That he was doing it for his family. He told you that." "Eventually." "Yes." The air between them felt very thin, like they were both breathing carefully, afraid of what a deep breath might release. "Nadia," Imani said, and it was strange, saying her name for the first time, making her real, making her a person and not just a word that Deshawn had used to explain away his betrayal. "You deserve someone who chose you. Fully. On their own. Without pressure, without performance. You deserve to be somebody's first choice." Nadia looked at her for a long moment. "So do you," she said softly. And just like that, in a coffee shop in Lincoln Park, over 2 untouched drinks, these two women stopped being rivals. They became something else. Something quiet and complicated and real. Witnesses to each other's pain. Imani drove home from that meeting a different woman. She couldn't have explained exactly what shifted. But something did. Sitting across from Nadia, seeing the damage laid out clearly, in a real face, with real eyes, made the whole situation concrete in a way that Deshawn's words never had. This wasn't a love story anymore. This was a mess. And she was tired of being inside it. She called Deshawn that evening. "I met your wife today," she said. Silence. "Imani." "I'm not angry," she said. And she wasn't. She was something past anger. Something quieter and colder and more final. I just want you to know that I sat across from her. I looked her in the eye. And I told her she deserves better. And Deshawn, she paused. So do I. I know, he said. His voice was low. Wrecked. I know you do. Then act like it, she said. Stop calling me. Stop finding new numbers. Stop showing up. Let me go. If you ever actually loved me, let me go. She ended the call. And this time she waited. The weeks after that call were the hardest. Imani had thought that clarity would bring peace. That once she said the right words, drew the firm line, the healing would begin like the sun coming out after rain, clean and immediate and obvious. But healing doesn't work like that. It's not a straight road. It's more like bad weather. Some days clear, some days a storm blows in from nowhere and you're right back on the bathroom floor, crying into your knees, wondering if this is just who you are now. A woman defined by a wound. She started having panic attacks. Not dramatic, movie-style panic attacks. The quiet kind. The kind where you're sitting at your desk and suddenly your chest tightens and you can't quite catch your breath and a voice inside you starts saying you're not okay. You're not okay. You're not okay on a loop until you have to excuse yourself and go stand in a bathroom stall and breathe until it passes. She started losing weight she couldn't afford to lose. Sleeping too much on weekends and not enough during the week. She'd scroll through old text messages, something she knew she shouldn't do, something she told herself every single time she did it, and then sit there with her phone in her hands feeling like she'd been punched. She said it to her reflection one morning, quietly, out loud, like a confession. I am becoming someone I don't recognize. And that was the moment something changed. Not because she suddenly got better, not because the pain stopped, but because she recognized, in hearing her own voice say those words, that she still cared about the woman in the mirror. That somewhere underneath all this grief and confusion and self-neglect, Imani, the real Imani, the one who had studied at midnight, the one who had gotten on that bus every morning and promised herself this wasn't forever, she was still in there. Waiting, refusing to disappear entirely. Okay, she whispered to herself. Okay, we're not doing this anymore. She made an appointment with a therapist that same day. Her therapist's name was Dr. Angela Moore. Black woman, natural locks, an office full of plants. The kind of calm energy that made you feel like the world was slightly more manageable. At their first session, Imani sat on the couch across from her and talked for 45 minutes straight. All of it, everything, Deshawn and the job and the coffee shop and Nadia and the panic attacks and the bathroom floor. And Dr. Moore listened to every word without flinching. At the end of the session, she said something that Imani would think about for years. You gave this man credit for your growth. But Imani, who studied, who sat at that kitchen table at midnight, who applied for the job when fear said don't. He cheered. That matters. But you did the work. It was always you. Imani sat with that. And somewhere in the sitting, something slowly, carefully began to unknot. There's a season in every strong woman's life that nobody talks about enough. It's not the breakdown. Everybody talks about the breakdown. And it's not the triumphant comeback. That part gets celebrated, shared, turned into motivational posts and Sunday morning testimonies. It's the season in between. The quiet, unglamorous, invisible season where you're not broken anymore, but you're not healed yet either. Where you're just working, showing up, doing the small things, taking your vitamins, going to therapy, drinking your water, answering your emails, breathing, just breathing, one day at a time, trusting that the woman you're becoming is worth the wait. That was Imani's season now. She had stopped waiting for Deshawn to call. She had stopped checking her phone every 20 minutes with that specific brand of hope that's really just dressed-up anxiety. She had stopped measuring her days by whether or not she had heard from him. She started measuring them differently. By how many times she laughed. By how far she ran on the lakefront trail on Saturday mornings. First a mile, then 2, then 4. By how well she slept. By how she felt when she looked in the mirror. Not whether she was beautiful enough or enough, just how she felt. Was she present? Was she here? Was she growing? Dr. Moore had given her a practice. Every evening, write down 3 things you did today that the woman you want to be would be proud of. Imani had rolled her eyes a little at first. It sounded simple to the point of being silly. But she did it, and somewhere around the 3rd week, she noticed something. The list was getting easier to write. Called Mama back instead of letting it go to voicemail. Stayed in the meeting even when I felt like my imposter syndrome was louder than my voice. Ate a real meal. Sat at the table. Didn't scroll while I ate. Let myself be sad for 20 minutes, set a timer, then got up and washed my face. Small things. Invisible things. Revolutionary things. She threw herself into work the way she used to, not as escape, but as expression. There's a difference, and she was learning to feel it. Before, work had been a place to hide. A place to be the competent version of herself when the emotional version was too much to carry. Now it was something else. Now it was the place where she got to prove to herself what she was made of. Her team noticed. Her director noticed. And 6 months after everything fell apart with Deshawn, Imani was called into her director's office and offered a promotion. Senior Director of Brand Strategy. A team of 15. A budget that made her heart rate spike just looking at the numbers. An office, a real one, with a door and a window and a view of the Chicago skyline that on clear days made her breath catch. She accepted it on the spot. And driving home that evening, stuck in traffic on Lakeshore Drive with the windows down and the late summer air coming in warm and sweet, she thought about what Dr. Moore had told her. It was always you. She pressed her hand to her chest, felt her own heartbeat. It was always me. She didn't cry. She just smiled, small and private and real. The kind of smile that belongs only to you. She had been in her new role for exactly 3 weeks when Deshawn reached out again. Not a call this time. Not a text. He showed up. She was walking out of her building after a late evening. Laptop bag on her shoulder, coffee in one hand, keys in the other, and there he was. Standing next to his car across the street. Just standing there. Watching for her. She stopped. They looked at each other across the distance of the street and something old and complicated and deeply human, passed between them. Like a language only they spoke. Like a song you haven't heard in years that still knows every word. She crossed the street because she was not a woman who ran anymore. You can't keep doing this, she said. Her voice was calm. She noticed that about herself, the calm. A year ago she would have been shaking. Now she was just steady. I know, he said. I know. I needed to see you. I needed you to know something. Deshawn. Nadia left. Imani went very still. She filed for separation 2 months ago, he said. It's almost final. She said she deserved better. Those were her exact words. She said she'd rather be alone than loved halfway. Imani felt something move through her. Not triumph. Not satisfaction. Something quieter and more bittersweet than either of those things. She thought about Nadia in that coffee shop. Nervous hands, steady eyes, dignity intact even while her world was fracturing. She did it, Imani thought. She actually did it. I'm not telling you this because I expect anything, Deshawn said quickly, like he'd rehearsed this part. I'm not here to ask you to come back. I know I lost the right to ask that a long time ago. I wanted you to know. And I wanted to tell you, face to face, that I am sorry. Not the sorry I said when I was trying to keep you from leaving. Real sorry. The kind that doesn't need anything back from you. Imani studied his face for a moment. He looked different. Not older exactly, but heavier. Like a man who had finally started carrying the full weight of his own choices and was only now understanding how much they actually weighed. I appreciate that, she said finally. I do. Can we? He started. No, she said. Gently. Completely. No, Deshawn. We can't. He nodded. Slowly. Like he had expected it, but had needed to hear it anyway. You're going to be great, he said. You already are. I know, she said. And she walked back across the street. She didn't look back. Not because she was being dramatic. Not because she was performing strength for his benefit. But because she genuinely, truly didn't need to. The woman she had become didn't look back. She had things in front of her worth walking toward. 2 weeks later, Imani got a text from Nadia. I did it. Separation is final next month. I just wanted you to know. And I wanted to say thank you. What you said in that coffee shop, about deserving to be somebody's first choice. I wrote it on a sticky note and put it on my bathroom mirror. I looked at it every morning until I believed it. Imani sat at her kitchen table reading that message 3 times. Then she typed back. You did the hard part. I just said words. You chose yourself. That took courage I don't know if I fully have yet. Nadia replied. You have it. You just don't always see it in yourself. And then, after a pause, can I take you to lunch sometime? I don't have many people in Chicago. And I think we understand each other in a way most people wouldn't. Imani smiled at her screen. It was strange. It was unconventional. It was the kind of thing that didn't make easy sense when you tried to explain it to other people. But sometimes the most profound connections come out of the most unexpected wreckage. Sometimes the person who understands your specific pain most completely is the person who is standing in the middle of the same storm. She typed back, same. Let's do it. You pick the place. They had lunch the following Saturday. And then again 2 weeks after that. And slowly, carefully, the way all real friendships are built. Not in grand gestures, but in small, consistent moments of showing up. Imani and Nadia built something. Not a friendship born of gossip or shared grievance. A friendship born of mutual recognition. Of two women who had loved the same flawed man, and both emerged from it clearer about who they were and what they refused to accept. Nadia was a graphic designer. Brilliant, visually. She had an eye for color and composition that made Imani almost jealous the first time she saw her portfolio. Wait, Imani said, scrolling through her work on Nadia's phone over their second lunch. Nadia, this is exceptional. You're doing brand work. Freelance. Here and there. Nothing serious. Are you serious right now? Imani turned the phone toward her. This is serious. This is exactly the kind of creative direction my team needs for the rebrand campaign we're planning. Nadia blinked. You're not. I'm offering you a contract. A real one. Not charity, not pity. I need someone who can do exactly this, and you can do exactly this. If you want it. Nadia looked at her for a long moment. This is a very strange life, she said quietly. Imani laughed, a real laugh, bright and surprised and full. Girl, you have no idea. They worked together on the rebrand campaign for 3 months. It was one of the most creatively fulfilling professional experiences Imani had ever had. Nadia's visual language brought Imani's strategic vision to life in ways that made their presentations feel like art. The client was floored. The agency was floored. The campaign won an industry award. At the award ceremony, standing next to Nadia in a room full of people applauding what they had built together, Imani thought about the Tuesday evening she had sat in a Caribbean restaurant in Bronzeville while her world came apart. She thought about the bathroom floor. She thought about the panic attacks and the 3 a.m. scrolling and the version of herself she had barely recognized in the mirror. And she thought, look where that pain brought you. Not in spite of the breaking. Because of it. It had been almost a year since the coffee shop. A year since she had sat across from a beautiful stranger and told her she deserved to be someone's first choice. A year since she had walked away from Deshawn on a street outside her office building and not looked back. A year of therapy, of running, of work, of building, of Nadia's friendship, of learning, slowly and imperfectly, how to be alone without being lonely, how to be still without being empty. Imani was sitting on her couch one Sunday evening, the kind of Sunday that used to hurt the most, the quiet kind, and she realized something. It didn't hurt anymore. Not the way it used to. The ache was still there. Love doesn't just disappear because it becomes inconvenient. That's not how it works, and anyone who tells you otherwise is selling something. She still thought about Deshawn sometimes. She probably always would. He was woven into the story of who she became in ways that couldn't be unwoven without unraveling the whole thing. But the pain, the desperate, consuming, floor-level pain, was gone. In its place was something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not the peace you perform for other people. Not the I'm fine peace. Not the peace that's really just numbness dressed up in a smile. Real peace. The kind that lives in your chest. The kind that doesn't need to be explained or defended. The kind that comes from knowing, deeply, structurally, in your bones, that you are going to be okay. That you are already okay. That you were okay even when you didn't feel it. She called her mama that evening. Her mama picked up on the second ring, the way she always did. Like she'd been waiting, like she'd always been waiting, like all the years and miles between them didn't change the fact that her antenna was always up for her daughter's voice. Baby, her mama said. And just that word, just baby, in that voice, that specific voice that was the first sound Imani had ever known, broke something open in a good way. The kind of breaking that's really just releasing. Mama, Imani said. I'm okay. A pause. I know you are, her mama said. I always knew you would be. How did you always know that? Her mama was quiet for a second. Then, because I know what you're made of, Imani. I was there when they made you. And baby, they did not shortchange you. Imani pressed her free hand to her face. Laughed a little. Cried a little. The good mix. I'm coming home for Christmas, she said. I already started cooking, her mama said. Now, because you've been patient, because you've been here with Imani through every chapter of this, I owe you the full picture. You're probably wondering about Deshaun. Where did he land after all of this? What happened to the man who had everything? A woman who loved him. A woman who built herself up partly in the light of his belief, and chose again and again to handle it all so poorly. Life, as it tends to do, had some things to say about that. After the separation from Nadia was finalized, Deshaun found himself doing something he had never truly done in his adult life. He was alone. Not just physically alone, though that too, but alone in the deeper sense. Without the warmth of Imani's devotion to return to. Without Nadia's grace and patience. Without the comfortable scaffold of other people's love holding his life in shape. Just him. And his choices. And the mirror. He did what a lot of men do in that situation. He got busy. He worked more. He went out more. He filled the silence with noise and the emptiness with activity. He dated a little. Nothing real, nothing that went anywhere, because something about stepping into something new felt dishonest when he still hadn't fully reckoned with what he'd left behind. He started going to therapy too. Not because he was ready, but because he was tired. Because the man he saw in the mirror had stopped looking like someone he recognized. And that scared him more than any external consequence ever had. His therapist, a no-nonsense brother out of Hyde Park who had exactly zero interest in letting Deshaun feel sorry for himself, asked him early on, "What do you want your life to say about you when it's over?" Deshaun had sat with that question for weeks. He called his mother, had the conversation he had been avoiding for years, the one about expectations and pressure, and the silent contract he had signed with his family that said their comfort mattered more than his integrity. It was a hard conversation. His mother cried. He cried. Nothing was fully resolved in one call. But it started. He got honest with himself, in the way that only loneliness and therapy and time can make you honest, about the fact that he had loved Imani. Really loved her. And that love, real as it was, had not been enough to make him brave. And that was on him. Not on circumstances. Not on family pressure. On him. He wrote Imani a letter. A real one, handwritten for pages. He didn't send it. Dr. Moore told him not to. That Imani had not consented to receiving his processing, and that the letter was for him, not for her. So he kept it, folded in the back of his journal. Some apologies are for the person who gave the wound. Some are for the person who carried it. And some, the most necessary kind, are for the man in the mirror. Deshaun was finally learning the difference. He heard through mutual connections, eventually, about Imani's promotion, about the award-winning campaign, about the woman she had become, which was really just the woman she had always been, finally given room to stand at her full height. He heard it, and he felt two things simultaneously, pride and grief, tangled together the way they always are when you've loved someone you've also failed. He didn't reach out. That was the most important thing he ever did for her. He stayed silent. He let her be free. He let her win in the quiet, without witness, without credit, without making her success about him in any way. And in doing that, in finally letting go, he began slowly the long work of becoming someone worthy of a love he hadn't yet found. Imani turned 29 on a Thursday. Her team surprised her with cupcakes in the office. Nadia sent flowers, birds of paradise and white roses, because she had a gift for knowing exactly what a moment needed. Her mama called at midnight the night before, technically, because that was when Imani was born, 12:04 a.m. on a Thursday morning. And her mama had never missed that call in 29 years. Kezia came over that evening, and they made jerk chicken together from scratch, the kind that takes all day, and they ate it with their shoes off and their laughter loud and the city glittering outside Imani's window. It was an ordinary birthday. Nothing cinematic. Nothing that would make a great photo. It was one of the best nights of her life. Because she was present for it. Fully present, fully herself. Not half there while the other half of her was somewhere else reaching for something she couldn't hold. She was here. Just here. In her kitchen with her friend, eating food she had made with her own hands. In a life she had built with her own effort. In a city that didn't care about her struggles but had made room for her success anyway. She was enough. She had always been enough. It had just taken losing herself, almost completely, to understand what enough actually felt like. At therapy that week, Dr. Moore asked her, "If you could go back and talk to the Imani who was sitting on the bathroom floor, what would you say to her?" Imani thought about it for a long time. Then she said, "I'd tell her to stay. Not in the relationship. Leave the relationship. Please leave it sooner. But stay in herself. Don't lose herself trying to make sense of someone else's cowardice. Don't look in the mirror and see less than what's there. Because what's there, what was always there, is something worth fighting for." I'd tell her that the man who believed in her was right about her. He just didn't have the courage to be the man she deserved. And his lack of courage was never a reflection of her worth. It was a reflection of his limits. And I'd tell her, I'd make sure she really heard this, that the best version of herself doesn't come from being loved by the right person. It comes from refusing to disappear when the wrong person shows her something she can't unsee. Stay. Grow. Become. That's the whole assignment. Dr. Moore was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I think you just answered your own question. So here we are, at the end of Imani's story, or maybe just the end of this chapter, because women like Imani don't have endings, they have evolutions. I want you to sit with something before you leave. Imani didn't get revenge by making Deshaun pay. She didn't blow up his life. She didn't post about it. She didn't need an audience for her pain or an audience for her healing. She did something much harder and much more powerful than any of that. She chose herself. Quietly. Repeatedly. On the days it was easy and on the days it felt impossible. She chose herself in therapy offices and on lakefront trails and in late-night phone calls with her mama and in boardrooms where she walked in knowing her worth because she had done the work of understanding it. She became unreachable. Not because she blocked his number, but because she grew into a version of herself that the old situation simply no longer had access to. That's the revenge that lasts. Not the kind that hurts someone else. The kind that heals you. To every woman watching this who has loved someone halfway, who has been the one doing all the believing, all the building, all the staying, I want you to hear this clearly. His failure to choose you fully was never about your value. It was about his capacity. And you cannot pour your worth into someone else's limitations and expect it to fill them. You can only pour it back into yourself. You are not too much. You are not enough. You are exactly right for someone with the courage to see it. And until that person comes, or even if they never do, you are still allowed to build a life so full and so real, and so yours that when you look out the window of the life you've created, all you can think is, I made this. Through everything, I made this. If this story moved you, if it said something you needed to hear, share it with someone who needs it tonight. You never know whose bathroom floor moment this might reach. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss a story. Because every week, we come here and we tell the truth about love and pain and the women who survive both. This has been He Chose Them Over Me, but life had other plans. Take care of yourself out there. And remember, you are the one you've been waiting for.